This week's parsha of seitzei is second only to Parshas Kedoshim in the number of mitzvot which appear in the parsha. And therefore the Meforshim stop to consider why so many mitzvot, so to speak, were put into Moshe's final speech in Chumash Dvarim. Why don't they appear, so to speak, in the regular Torah, in the Torah before Chumash Dvarim? Because Chumash Dvarim differs from the other four books of the Torah, certainly in its nuance. And because of that, therefore, the question arose, why wasn't it mentioned before? So there are many answers that are given. One of the answers is because this is right before Knisos on Eretz Yisrael, and so to speak, these mitzvot have more meaning or more relevance, or they're more actual than they would have been in the Midbar itself. So therefore, he had to do it. Others say that because it's a new generation, a whole new set of people, so they wanted to hear mitzvot directly, so Moshe waited to tell them these mitzvot. But we have a rule that we learned in the Parsha of Bahar, that Ma Inyan Shemitah Eitzel Har Sinai. Why does the Torah mention that the mitzvah of Shemitah is from Har Sinai, was told to Moshe of Har Sinai, to teach us that just like this mitzvah, the Torah specifically says, was told to Moshe on Har Sinai, all the mitzvahs were told to Moshe by Har Sinai. So that even the mitzvahs which appear in this week's parsha, in seitzei, also were told to Moshe by Har Sinai. Except that Moshe did not record them until now, until this parsha, for whatever reasons we will be able to understand. But that all the mitzvahs are from Har Sinai. So that develops into an idea which the Gemara fosters often, that there are things that are called halacha l'Moshe miSinai. In other words, there's no biblical reference to this inyan. An example, how do we know that tefillin are black? I mean, if we wouldn't know that, then every bar mitzvah, would match the color of the invitation. So how do we know what... and how do we know how tefillin is supposed to look? So we have a reference to that in Anim Zmiros. We say Kesher Tefillin Herel Onov. The Rebbeinu Shalom showed Moshe how to make the Kesher Tefillin. And Meforshim say that refers to the Kesher of the Shalrosh in the back of the head. And that's why it says in the Torah, Ponai lo yero, you won't see it head on, but you'll see ma'achorai. So Moshe saw the kesher shel tefillin. Therefore, we have a question that's raised. There's no unanimity as to what the kesher shel tefillin should look like. There's a tradition, I think, that certainly all the Lithuanian Jews, I think the German Jews, etc., is that it's a daled. The kesher is made in the form of a daled. There's a broad line, and then there's a vertical line, and then from the vertical line come the two straps. But there's another tradition that's, I think, has more adherents, that it's a square. So some say the square is really a double daled. It's a daled this way and a daled that way. And so that the daled was always what he was shown on our Sinai. That was the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that there has to be a daled. How you make the daled, how many daleds, that's already not necessarily Sinai was to make the daled. But we see that this concept of halacha l'Moshe Sinai is necessary simply for the observance of many of the mitzvahs, because the Torah does not give us details. Kshartem los al yadecha, or you letotafos beinenecha. So the word totafos itself, but we don't know what that means. Rabbi Akiva says it's an African word. It means double, twice as much. So halacha l'Moshe Sinai becomes a necessary tool in order to understand the Torah. We have the same thing by mezuzahs. It says, "Chsavtum al mezuzahs beisecha v'yisharecha." So maybe we should take a chisel, and in the wood or the stone we'll write. And it doesn't say what to write. So again, the Gemara Menachos explains to us that that was halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that we take a piece of parchment and we write on it the parsha of Shema v'Oyam Shemoah, and we roll it up, and on the outside we write God's name, Shin Dalet Yud. Now, over the ages, the custom has been to write other letters as well, based on Kabbalistic interpretations. But so that's the fulfillment of the mitzvah of mezuzah. How would we know how to do that? And on what side? Maybe you're right on both sides. So again, all of that remains in the realm of halacha l'Moshe Sinai. We're coming to Sukkos. So halachically speaking, you learn the Gemara Sukkah. You can make a sukkah that's almost invisible. You only need 2 walls plus a piece of a third wall, and the wall need not be solid, and if it can be 3 tefachim open on the bottom, and we say gurachis, gurasik, we look like the wall goes up, we look like the wall goes down, and we have the idea of dofen ankuma, that if part of the roof of the sukkah is covered, but we look as though the wall bends in as long as there isn't dalet amos. So all of these halachas, which are not explicit in the Torah, and which we could never derive from the Torah. So that remains in this concept of halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Moshe taught us the dinim of sukkah, he taught us the dinim of mezuzah, he taught us the dinim of tefillin. And that's why he's Moshe Rabbeinu. And he's still Rabbeinu because he's constantly teaching to us, because there are always new insights into Chazal and into what the mitzvah itself is. And so this tradition, when Rebbe undertook to put into writing Torah Shebaal Peh, when he undertook to write the Mishnah, and then as a follow-up to it, the Amoraim wrote the Gemara. When the Amoraim wrote the Gemara, they included in it the halachas l'Moshe Sinai. so that we would have a basis to our traditions. So Torah Shebaal Peh has a biblical origin. The whole lomdus in the Gemara is how the Gemara learned Torah Shebaal Peh out of Torah Shebiksav. The tradition is, for instance, that the Gaon of Vilna in his latter years only studied Chumash. In the words of the Chumash, he saw the entire Talmud, he saw all of Torah Shebaal Peh, everything that was developed, because you can see it in the Chumash itself. They once asked him, where do we know that you have to make a pidyon haben after 30 days? It just says, V'chol b'chor b'necha tifteh. Doesn't say, how do I know? So he said, because it's included in the word Breishis. The Breishis, he said, is the Rosh Tevas, it's the acronym for Ben Rishon Achar Shloshim Yom Tifteh. So the Gaon saw it in the word. Because the Gaon saw the Torah in perfection. If you study it only superficially, so then it's not that apparent. But Torah Shebaal Peh always can be found in Torah Shebiksav. And that really, many of the Achronim developed that. The Meshech Chochmah, Meir Simchas Perish, the Chumash, is basically the idea that everything that's in Torah Shebaal Peh, you can see it in the Pasuk. You can see it in the juxtaposition of the Psukim, in the grammar, in how the Torah phrased it. In other words, the Chazal didn't invent it out of thin air. They didn't come and say, this is what Torah Shebaal Peh is. However, Halacha Moshe Sinai has no biblical roots to it at all. We can't see the Halacha Moshe Sinai in the pasuk, and therefore it has a different level of what shall I say, stringency to it. And the Gemara discusses that, whether or not something that's mefeirish in the Torah is one level, and something that's halach Moshe Sinai as another level. The Gemara does its best to elevate halach Moshe Sinai to have the same stringencies as the drushes that Chazal made into Torah Shebaal Peh. There are various traditions, and so it became almost a legendary thing amongst the Jewish people. For instance, we all know that in the order of the Parshias of the Tefillin, there's a difference of opinion. We say it's Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, but it's really older than that. In the time of the Gaonim already, there were different opinions as to the order of the four Parshias which go into the tefillin that we wear. But it became that the accepted order is that of Rashi. We call it Rashi because Rashi describes it for us in the Gemara. And Rabbeinu Tam, his grandson, disagrees. And it's the same four Parshias, it's just in a different, it's a machlekes, and the Gemara says, Avoyos be'emtza. The V'hoyo ki Yiviyachov, V'hoyo im Shamoah tishmiu, those Avoyos are in the middle. What does it mean in the middle? Does it mean it's the second and third Parshias, or the second and fourth Parshias? That's one of the machlekes. So there's a legend that's brought in the Seder Adoros, which is a book of legends. It was, the entertainment of its time. And in the Seder Adoros, he writes that Rabbeinu Tam had a dream one night. And in the dream, Moshe Rabbeinu came to him and he said, "What are you making a tumult here with the tefillin?"